morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Ultra Radio. So today, we need to continue our look at the rotation by having a look at all the cards lost from Ultra Prism. Now, we are going to split them into categories. For what it's worth, I've gone and got 3 or 4 categories. The great cards, You Used to Be Cool, Fringe cards, and then other trainers, because it's so hard to categorize trainers outside of the really great ones. So, not every single one of these cards is going to be one you're going to miss personally, but it's supposed to be here so that all the cards you could conceivably be playing in the near future, this is the ones you're going to be losing. Now, as far as I'm concerned, there are 4 great cards that we're losing from Ultra Prism, and one of them is Cynthia. The fact that we're losing Cynthia is absolutely huge. It is the best shuffle draw we've got at the moment. Yes, we've still got Professor's Research Magnolia, and yes, we're still going to have Marnie, but the fact of the matter is, if those cards were good enough by themselves, we wouldn't all still be playing Cynthia. And yet we are. And I think that really should tell you about all you need to know in terms of how big a loss this is going to be. And while we're talking supporters, we're also losing Lily. Yeah, Lily was reprinted in Ultra Prism, but it's going again, and that's a little bit sad. That's another really good supporter that we're losing. We're gonna be a lot worse off for our supporter options. Lily was the one draw till you got 6 cards in hand, unless it's the first turn of the game, in which case it's draw until you've got 8 cards in hand. Either way, these 2 are going to be big losses. Speaking of big losses, a skateboard is a sneaky huge loss because there are so many decks that rely on Jirachi. If you've got a few minutes, look through all the deck list videos I've done, and I've done many, and then have a look at all of the ones that play Jirachi. When it's in the active, you look at the top 5 cards of your deck, find a trainer card, put it into your hand, and then go to sleep. But of course, you then need a skateboard so you can free retreat even if you're asleep. Maybe you wake up, in which case you can use U-turn board. Maybe you use something like a Galarian Rapidash so you can't go to sleep. But this is not a good solution. Jirachi is one of the best cards in the format at the moment, and although Jirachi survives the rotation, a skateboard is one of the reasons it's so good, and that does not survive the rotation. Those are very symbiotic, by the way. Anyone remember how much play a skateboard got before Jirachi? Basically none. Seriously, it was a League Cup promo and nobody wanted it. And one that I'm actually quite happy is going is Oranguru. Oranguru is a card which has dominated sections of the last few years. It's got resource management that lets you pick any free cards in your discard pile, put them on the bottom of your deck, and you use this to constantly reuse cards like Crushing Hammer to get rid of your opponent's energy, and Reset Stamp to wreck their hand, and there's so many options here, ladies and gentlemen. It's awkward. We do actually have a replacement for this, mind you. It's my boy Excadrill, the one from Unified Minds, which gets 4 cards randomly into your deck, but it is on a stage 1 for a non-colorless energy. I'll leave that one up to you. Now, I did say that we were losing 4 big cards. Crushing Hammer was kept in the format for a long time by virtue of its secret rare print in Ultra Prism, but it has since been printed in Sword and Shield, so that gets in the format. And similarly, Palpad for a long time hadn't been printed since Ultra Prism, but that was also reprinted in Sword and Shield, so both of those cards would have rotated out, but for being reprinted in Sword and Shield. So they're not. So those were the big losses. There weren't a huge amount of them, but they're kind of good. A couple of the sets rotating didn't have gigantic amazing cards, but I'd argue that they're all pretty big losses. However, there were a bunch of cards that, as I like to say, used to be cool. Now, one that really does straddle the line is Solgaleo GX. This was actually only kept in the format because of the gold version which came out in this Ultra Prism set. It really was a card that was used in Mewtwo and Mew, almost exclusively for the GX attack. For just a single energy, you could use its GX attack to search your deck for up to 5 energy cards and attach them to your Pokemon in any way you like, bearing in mind, of course, that Mewtwo and Mew could copy a Stage 2 as long as it was in the discard pile. Now, Glaceon GX was kind of popular for a while. The ability freezing gaze, as long as it is your active Pokemon, it turns off abilities of your opponent's GX and EX Pokemon. It's dropped in play a lot lately, and to be fair, EXs and GXs are going to be less and less relevant as time goes by, but it was still kind of cool. The attacks were fine. The GX attack doing 50 damage for each damage counter on the active was nice, but it did take a little bit of setup. Persimmon itself wasn't particularly great, but the ability Power Huddle, as long as it's on your bench, your Persimmon's attacks do 30 more damage to your opponent's active evolution Pokemon. But of course there was a huge combo here with the Persimmon that came around in Sun and Moon that did 10 damage base plus 30 more for each of your benched Persimmon. So obviously this could then add more damage to that Persimmon as long as you were playing against an evolution Pokemon. But when the other Persimmon rotated, this one became rubbish. Darkrai Prism Star was quite nice in Speed Dark decks. Now these haven't been good for a while, really, since Darkrai from Breakpoint rotated out. But Darkrai Prism Star was always quite nice to get a couple extra energy on the field, and let's face it, Weavile GX could move them around, so this was a fairly decent Pokemon. Duskmane Necrozma was a pretty good card. I certainly topped a few tournaments with this. It had really nice attacks. For 4 energy, you did 220 and discarded 3 of them. For 3 energy, you did 250 damage as a GX attack, but only if you were behind in the game. It caused some standoffs. You could accelerate the energy with Solgaleo Prism Star, and you could accelerate the energy with Magnezone, although I was not a fan of the Magnezone list myself. But either way, it was a good card for a while. Garchomp was a fun little card that could do a lot of damage if you've played a Cynthia this turn, but honestly it was the fighting Garchomp coming in the next set that was the better of them. Silvally GX, now this should have rotated out the last rotation, but this was a proper alternate art new print of it, so it stayed around for a little while. It had an ability which gave all of your basics free retreat. For free energy it did 120 and attached a basic from your discard to one of your bench, or for free energy as a GX attack, it did 50 damage for each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. It was quite good for a while, it saw a bunch of play, but it properly fell out of favour. Now I did mention Solgaleo Prism Star a moment ago. For 1 Metal Energy, you got to attach 1 Metal Energy from your discard pile to your Pokemon in any way you like, for each of your opponent's Pokemon in play. It was nice for accelerating energy, and Lunala Prism Star did the same thing for Psychic decks. Now the 4 energy 160 was quite nice, though Lunala's attack, 4 energy 20 damage for each energy attached to all Pokemon, yours and your opponent's, was a little bit better, but they really were a nice pair of Pokemon for getting energy on the field. Certainly you would want to play a Solgaleo in a Metal deck, and Lunala in a bunch of Psychic. We also had Dawn Wings Necrozma, which really does seem to have fallen out of favour recently, but the ability that lets you jump in the active whenever you like really is quite nice. And to be fair, we've now got Air Balloon, which would give it free retreat, so maybe this will come back a little bit pre-rotation. We also had a really nice GX attack that again could only be used if you were behind on prizes, but it did 180 damage and made it invincible the following turn. Yeah, that was an attack that won quite a lot of games. And then finally, Tapu Lele was better back when we had counter energy before the previous rotation, but 2 energy and you got to move any damage counters around your opponent's side of the field however you liked. If you were spreading damage or doing them big attacks without getting KOs, Magical Swap was absolutely, forgive the pun, magical. Now, there are some other Fringe cards here that saw a little bit of play here and there. These are ones that you might see seeing play lately, although let's be clear, these aren't phenomenal cards that you'll see all the time. They're Fringe cards that you'll see here and there. Firstly, Weavile. Now, Weavile could have gone in the You Used to Be Cool. It was kind of trendy for a little while. Weavile for 1 Darkness Energy does 50 damage for each of your opponent's Pokemon that has an ability. 4 Pokemon with an ability for your opponent, 200 damage, and so on. This was a really nice tech. Did also combine nicely with the other Weavile that did 60 damage to each Pokemon with an ability, though that was yours and your opponent's, but that one did rotate out in the previous rotation. This one survived and still sees around here and there. Now, there were a bunch of Rotoms in this set, and everybody tried to make those Rotoms work. They were very trendy for a while. They all had the ability that let you attack for free, just so long as you had 9 or more tools in your discard. So we had regular Rotom that just did 120 and was a psychic type. Fan Rotom that did 20 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon and had free retreat. Wash Rotom that did 50 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. That one sucked. We had the Lightning Rotom, which just did 120 but was a lightning type. We had Frost Rotom that did 10 damage base plus 20 more for each energy attached to all of your opponent's Pokemon. Heat Rotom that just did a plain 80, so that one again sucked and we didn't play it unless we really wanted to hit fire weakness. And Mo Rotom that did 60 damage and discarded a special energy. You'd play them all in the same deck, and if you could get enough tools in the discard, you had a lot of good options. Very much a Fringe deck. Speaking of Fringe, how about Araquanid? Araquanid was a very nice Pokemon with a very nice ability that made it immune to fire Pokemon. It wasn't a great card, but as an anti-fire deck, it could be kind of fun. Speaking of fire, the Infernape that had an ability that put 6 damage counters on burn Pokemon between turns was really quite nice, but it was pretty much reserved for Chandelure decks. Chandelure, of course, was the one from Unified Minds which will survive the rotation. 10 damage base, then you discard the top 5 cards of your deck, doing 60 more for each Pokemon discarded, and any fire Pokemon discarded got put straight onto your bench, even if they were a stage 2. So you would need to use Delphox for automatic burn, that'll be coming in the next video, and then you would use Infernape. It's fun, but it's not been a powerhouse thing. Now, Luxio was a card I got extremely excited about. Luxio for 1 colorless energy did 30 damage and stopped your opponent playing item cards from their hand. It was item lock. And of course, you could always use it with Luxray and memory energy. And you had the Shinx that let you evolve straight away on turn 1 if you went second. There was so much potential, but it's only ever been a Fringe deck. Now, Snuggly Generator decks have always been kind of fun. These are Pachirisu, 1 Lightning Energy, and for each of your bench Pokemon with Nuzzle, you search your deck for a Lightning Energy and attach it to that Pokemon. We've since had a Mulgarin team up that lets you search out those Pokemon with Nuzzle, and we've got Raichu that does a lot of damage if you've got a lot of Lightning Energy on the field. But it's never been anything more than a Fringe deck. I love it, but it's never been anything more than a Fringe deck. We've then got Rampardos. I've seen a little bit of play here and there. Rampardos for free energy just gets a 1-hit KO on a basic Pokemon, and you would use Super Boost Energy to pay that in one go. It pops up here and there. People try and use it, but again, Fringe deck. We've already mentioned that Magnezone that lets you attach Metal Energy. People tried to use that quite a lot. And there was Magearna. Now, Magearna was a Fringe card, but it saw more play than a lot of the cards on this list. Just once during your turn, you got to put a Pokemon tool attached to one of your Pokemon into your hand. And you could swap tools around, and there were really nice combos like the Tapu Lele, for instance, that every time you attached a Pokemon tool to it, as long as that tool was a Fairy Charm, confused your opponent's active Pokemon. So this was a card that got around a little bit. And then finally, we're going to have a look at the trainers. We're not going to split these into different categories, because honestly, trainers, it's not as simple as some of the Pokemon, because they popped in and out of decks all the time, so I do like to put trainers in their own category and look at pretty much all the trainers, because whereas there are some Pokemon that never see play, there are very few trainers that nobody ever uses. So one that I am particularly fond of here is Cyrus Prism Star. Cyrus Prism Star you can only play if your active Pokemon is water or metal. Your opponent chooses 2 bench Pokemon and shuffles all the other cards and everything attached to them into their deck. It could be a really brutal card if played at the right time. It could absolutely wreck your opponent's deck. We're also saying goodbye to Looker and Looker's Whistle. Looker let you draw the bottom 3 cards of your deck, and Looker's Whistle let you search for 2 cards named Looker and put them into your hand. Gave a little bit of consistency. I suppose I should also briefly mention Gardenia, heals 80 damage from a Pokemon with grass energy attached to it. Let's just say almost no play. Mars was a fun little card. You draw 2 cards and then discard a random card from your opponent's hand. Good for hand disruption, but honestly better in expanded where they're keeping it. Missing Clover was so much fun. If you just play 1, you look at the top card of your deck, but if you played all 4 at the same time, you took a prize card. Almost never worked, but it was a tantalizing card nonetheless. Mount Coronet was just a stadium that let you put 2 metal energy from your discard pile into your hand. It was really, really fun, especially in those Magnezone decks. Autopad has seen a surprisingly large amount of play. You flip a coin and if it's heads, you search your deck for an item card, reveal it and put it into your hand. Sucks if you flip tails, really nice if you flip heads. Pokemon Fan Club let you search out 2 basic Pokemon, reveal them and put them into your hand. Honestly, most of the time you're better off just using Professor Oak's setting, because that's okay, they go straight onto your bench so you lose any coming into play abilities, but it gets you 3 basics of different types, so it's not going to be the biggest loss ever. We're losing Volkner, which is going to suck for lightning decks. It lets you search a lightning energy and an item card. It sees a lot of play in a lot of lightning decks. We're also losing Peking Red Card. Now, Peking Red Card only actually stayed around by virtue of it being a gold card in this set. Otherwise, it would have rotated out last year. Your opponent reveals their hand, and you may have them shuffle it into their deck and draw the same number of cards. Again, quite nice for hand disruption. Now, in terms of memory cards, I should mention these briefly, I suppose, because obviously, along with Silvally, we had the memory cards that could change the typing of Silvally. And given that we do still have a Silvally that came around in Cosmic Eclipse, and a pretty good one at that, I suppose the memory cards are relevant. So we're losing Electric Memory, which turns you into a Lightning type, Fire Memory, which makes you a Fire type, and they're the 2 which we're losing from this particular set. Yeah, if you really want to go and be a Silvally deck, I suppose they're going to suck. Now, we are losing a couple of energy as well. We're losing Super Boost Energy. Now, that's a Prism Star card, so it's limited to 1 in your deck. But it was just 4 of any energy, as long as you had 3 stage 2s in play. But for weird stuff like Rampardos and also for Gardevoir decks briefly, this was actually a really good card. We haven't seen that many multiple stage 2 decks, but where they were played, it was really good. And then we're losing 2 of the unit energies, the Grass Water Fire and the Metal Lightning Psychic. They're alright. I mean, if you could find a deck that used multiple typings and they all fit on 1 unit energy, they were quite nice. They weren't as good as the Blend Energy we had pre-Fairy, because Blend Energy, there were only 2 of them, because they had 4 typings on each, but they were alright. They saw a little bit of play. And there we go, ladies and gentlemen, that's what we're losing from Ultra Prism. Lots of cards in and around there, and a few really big ones. Cynthia, Lily, a Skateboard, Oranguru alone. That is a list of cards that a lot of people are going to miss. Except Oranguru, where I'm fairly sure exactly half the player base will miss it, and the other half, and I'm in this half I'm afraid, will be delighted to see it go. So there we go. I want to hear from you guys now over in the comment section. Tell me which of these you will miss the most. Tell me if there's any cards from Ultra Prism that you're going to miss that I didn't put on the list. And tell me if there's any that you're just plain glad of leaving. Go nuts in the comment section, but please remember the rule. Be nice, would you? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays, where you can find out about a whole bunch of games that don't have Pokemon in, but are pretty gosh darned awesome nonetheless. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.